It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're finally starting to take a look at the movies of 1999, and we're starting on January 15th with four notable movies, including our first film that we have here, the biggest new release of the weekend, and easily the most memorable of the bunch, and that is, of course, James Van Der Beek in the high school football drama, Varsity Blues.
There's a time to obey.
We do things around here my way. You understand that?
A time to follow the rules. And then there's a time
This is your opportunity. I don't want your life.
to tear it up.
You don't always have to do the right thing. He was better than football. Can I have your autograph? Right here?
James Van Der Beek, Varsity Blues, rated R. Starts Friday in theaters everywhere.
So this was coming right after James Van Der Beek kind of made his presence known with Dawson's Creek on the WB, which had only premiered a year prior to this movie coming out. And you basically have the story here of a small-town high school football team through a tumultuous season in which the players must deal with the pressures of adolescence, their football-obsessed community, while having their overbearing coach constantly on their back. And in the small town of West Canton, Texas, football is a way of life, and losing is not an option. This is a plot that we've seen done over and over again. There's been many other movies that have been pretty much like this. Much better films, stuff like Remember the Titans, Friday Night Lights, but Varsity Blues definitely deserves to be up in that caliber. It's a film that not a lot of people really consider to be a great movie at first. I mean, it was a big hit when it came out, but it only got mixed critical reviews, but in the years since its release, it's gone on to have that cult following, and mostly because most of the people in this movie have gone on to have big careers. James Van Der Beek, Paul Walker was in this movie, Ron Lester, Scott Kahn, Ali Larter, Amy Smart, Jesse Plemons is in this film. The biggest veteran star of the film is John Voight, and he plays the coach of the film, and the movie just really... It's just a really well-made film. It fits the mood of an MTV movie. It doesn't feel like the MTV that we have nowadays, where it's just nothing but really bad reality TV shows and stars that are not really that big stars. This is a film that just fits the mold of what MTV was like back in the day, and their style is definitely all throughout this movie, but you could still get an appreciation of it, even if you're not the target MTV audience in this film. And it just has so many memorable moments to it. I mean, what more do I even to say about Ali Larter's character in the whipped cream bikini? I mean, come on, it's just like, it's just such a memorable moment in that film that just sticks with you after all of these years. And the movie itself is just a ton of fun. It's a really well-made film. It definitely delivers on everything that it promises, but then it gives you a little bit more with the talent that they have on board. It's a really good film, and I am glad to see that it has gotten the following that it's gotten over the years. It's kind of a required viewing film if you like these type of films like Friday Night Lights and Remember the Titans and stuff like these underdog sports dramas. I mean, this is required viewing, honestly. It's one you should definitely check out if you haven't seen it already, so... that is Varsity Blues, so let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is Val Kilmer in At First Sight.
Yeah.
Cool.
You think it's cool?
You are.
How much would you risk?
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to see?
How far would you go
Just keep you sane.
to discover love?
So we're not talking eyes here, we're talking the heart.
Val Kilmer,
I don't belong here. I'm not meant to see.
You'll see a lot, but none of that matters if you lose sight of what you want.
Mira Sorvino,
He just moves me.
At First Sight, rated PG-13, starts Friday, January 15th.
Before I say anything else, I gotta say, that shot with the cab was actually pretty cool. It's one of the few things that I can honestly say that's kind of positive about the movie. You have Val Kilmer as a blind man who has an operation to regain his sight at the urging of his girlfriend, played by Mira Sorvino, and he must deal with the challenges to his life. This is based off of a book called, an essay from Olivia Sacks' 1995 book, An Anthropologist on Mars, called To See and Not to See, and it's actually inspired by the true story of Cheryl Jennings. This is directed by Irwin Winkler. Irwin Winkler, of course, is the director of such films as The Net, Night in the City, Guilty by Suspicion, a longtime producer as well. And the pieces are there for something really entertaining, but it has a good premise. It just kind of falls into the category of, this is one of those films that's trying to win Oscars, is trying to get a cheap emotional out of you. And it has just a great cast overall. Sorvino, Kilmer, Kelly McGillis, Steven Weber, Bruce Davison, Nathan Lane. I mean, there's a great cast involved in here. Just not enough there to really make it stand out as anything unique or interesting. And plus it has a $60 million budget. I have no idea where that $60 million went to. I mean, it's a film that had some potential to it, but it just didn't live up to it. It's kind of the typical January type of film where you can see the potential and it just doesn't really show up when it's all said and done. It's just kind of buried by the studio. And you can definitely tell why, but could have been something interesting. It just wasn't, unfortunately. So, which is probably one more you could say about our next movie, and that is Virus.
On January 15th,
Something came into the ship.
from the producer of T2 and Aliens,
It's a life form, unlike anything we know.
comes a new form
Oh my God.
of terror.
Let's go!
Deadly welcome to us.
He wants us to spend points.
Virus, rated R. Starts Friday, January 15th, and theaters everywhere.
A movie so terrible that Jamie Lee Curtis herself called it a piece of shit. I mean, she's literally quoted by saying that, but this is based off of the comic book of the same name, telling the story of a ship beset by a malevolent extraterrestrial entity that seeks to turn humanity into cyborg slaves. It's basically a mix of Alien and the Terminator, which makes sense because the producer of this is Gale Ann Hurd, who also produced Aliens and the Terminator. And you have William Baldwin along with Donald Sutherland among the cast. The director of this is actually the man who did the co-direction for the Terminator 2 3D show at Universal Studios, and he was basically given the film the chance to direct this following that, and read the script, didn't like it, read the Dark Horse comic that was expanded to a script, and they were initially planning to pass on the film, but then he eventually became involved when Cameron was working on Titanic, and Cameron gave him some advice to change the film, so he liked it. So Bruno essentially left Titanic and essentially agreed to direct this film, and the end result is a very, very mediocre film that just pretty much is kind of like every movie that we talked about. Aliens, Terminator, I mean, it's very much like Deep Rising from the year prior. I mean, it has a lot of similarities to much better movies. And like I said, Jamie Lee Curtis himself literally called it a piece of shit, saying that would be the all-time piece of shit. It's just dreadful. That's the only good reason to be in bad movies. That's when you have friends. That's when your friends have bad movies. You can say, I've got the best one. I'm bringing Virus. And it's just like it's funny because she also said she tried to get the director fired because of how bad she thought the film was. I mean, that's how much she hated working on this movie. And that just says a whole lot about this film overall. Like, it's a January movie, too, and a film like this does not usually do well in January. And guess what? It has a huge budget, too. $75 million, and it only brought in $30 million worldwide. So, yeah, this was a disaster on so many levels. Virus. What more can I say about it? But let's go ahead and get to the last film we have here. Annette Bening and Robert Downey Jr. in Dreams.
They're hunting, looking for another victim.
She dreams his crimes before they happen. And I've been dreaming of you.
Get out of my brain.
Get out of my brain. And there's only one place to stop him.
How do you know me?
I'm not telling you.
You think you can scare me, you sick?
You can scare me, scare me, scare me. Annette Bening, Aidan Quinn, Robert Downey Jr. In Dreams, rated R.
So you've got Annette Bening playing this housewife who's married to a pilot, played by Aidan Quinn, and their little daughter Rebecca is their pride and joy. When a stranger kidnaps a girl, Claire dreams about the man, but Detective Jack Kay ignores her concerns. He's played by Stephen Ray, but when Rebecca disappears during a school play, Claire learns that her visions were actually premonitions, and she is connected to the killer, played by Robert Downey Jr., through her dreams. She has a nervous breakdown, tries to commit suicide. Her psychologist, Dr. Silverman, sends her to a mental institution, and soon she finds out that her husband will be the next victim of the serial killer. Furthermore, the serial killer was interned into the same cell in the hospital where she is. Will Claire be able to save Paul? I mean, I think that's pretty obvious on what's going to happen here. It's the film that has some interesting visuals to it. It has a good idea to it as well, but, I mean, it's just a film that just really does not have a whole lot there that makes it kind of stand out. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. plays a character whose name is literally Vivian. I mean, and they don't make it, and they basically tell you that they're basically telling you that this is not a female character. This is a character that is, or at least I'm assuming she's not a female character. If they did, they did a pretty terrible job of convincing you otherwise. But the film is just a cluttered mess. I can see the potential where they're going for kind of a more serious Nightmare on Elm Street, where you have Robert Downey Jr. as a different take on as a different version of Freddy Krueger in a way, but it just doesn't deliver on the final process when it's all said and done. And Neil Jordan does a pretty good job directing this for the most part. the script just isn't there. It just gets way too confusing. There's not a whole lot there to really make it worth it in the end. And there's just a lot of good talent here just being wasted on here. It's a film that had potential to it, but is largely just forgotten pretty quickly. Crashed and burned at the box office, too. Critic-wise, it did okay, but nothing to say that you needed to check this one out. And sadly, that's all I can pretty much say about this one. It's sadly a film that you probably would be best to kind of avoid it, because it's not really all that great. But despite the talent they had there, In Dreams is probably one that you should dream about not seeing anytime soon. So on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we'll have 5 movies, including Sharon Stone and Gloria. We also have Still Crazy, Children of Heaven, My Name is Joe, and The Winner. So 5 films overall to look at. We'll take a look at those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Until then, as always, take care.